Welcome to Shopper Matters, a podcast brought to you by the Independent Grocers Alliance. And now your host, Michael Laquier.
Hello and welcome to Shopper Matters, the podcast that explores the fast-paced omnichannel world of retail and insights that brands need to know to connect more effectively with consumers and shoppers. I'm your host, Michael Laquier. Shopper Matters is designed to bring you insights from industry leaders, actionable advice, and the latest thinking on what drives today's shoppers, highlighting the challenges that brands face and the opportunities that come from really understanding how people live, shop, and make decisions. Whether you're a brand manager, a retailer, or just passionate about the future of omnichannel marketing, the Shopper Matters podcast is here to share knowledge from the front lines of the industry and hopefully spark new ideas. Before we introduce today's guest, I invite you to consider following us on your preferred podcast listening app. Of course, if you're already not doing so. Subscribing, whether it's Amazon, Apple, Spotify, or other platforms, will ensure you automatically receive new episodes as we release them. So let's dive in and discuss what matters with shoppers. In today's episode, we're talking about grocery e-commerce. It's a space that has evolved from early days of perhaps doubt to a crisis era lifeline to a mission critical pillar of a long-term strategy. But as grocers scale and adapt their digital ecosystems, there's one big question. Are we treating e-commerce more as a cost center or a competitive advantage? So to answer that question and hopefully have a really good conversation about it, today we're joined with Nickitas, the General Manager of Retail Partnerships at Instacart. Nick, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Michael.
So we know, Nick, that shoppers shop everywhere and customers of any retailers are already shopping everywhere. So we know we've seen things 70, 80, 90, 100% of shoppers use both online and in store. What does it look like from the data that you're seeing, and what does a strong omni-channel experience require?
Yeah, I mean, look, grocers today need to be looking for a way to offer a seamless in-store and online experience, because I think traditionally folks have, we thought there was an online customer and in-store customer. The reality is they're the same. Customers shift between what their preferences are based on what's going on in their lives or the season of the year. And so increasingly, they want their grocers to offer an online experience that mirrors the same awesome merchandising, rewards, fresh experience that they get at store level. And so I think what's happening now is you're seeing a push by the retailers to embrace e-commerce in a way that they haven't ever before.
So, but in terms of, the omni-channel shopper, we know that everyone's shopping everywhere, but in terms of purchasing. So from your perspective, what's the role of the two different modalities? Are they all that different, or are they very similar?
Look, I think a lot of what online shopping, the promise that it fills is around convenience and personalization, right? The traditional in-store experience is in many ways a one-size-fits-all. But one of the things that we've seen, whether it's Netflix or others, is that you can use a digital experience to kind of curate for that shopper what they need. So the game changers look, surprisingly simple, right? When they come online, seeing items that are relevant to what they've previously purchased and other people like them. When they're adding things to the cart, they're getting personalized recommendations. They can do things like family shopping, where multiple people can add to the same cart. That drives bigger basket sizes, smart substitutions, so they're getting the right items in their basket. All of these things allow for an experience where you're getting all the things you enjoy from shopping from your favorite local grocer, but you've enhanced it in ways that are adding time back or quality of life. Another interesting thing is that you can do things on an online experience around organic or gluten-free or other dietary restrictions, where you kind of can completely resort the catalog and the experience for the shopper based on their needs.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important pieces of that, is that you can curate the experience, especially if you're looking for products, like you said, gluten-free, kosher, organic, high protein. You're not having to walk through every aisle and look at labels and figure this out. If you can curate that experience, it's going to be much more valuable to the shopper.
And then imagine too, like you're in a store, you add the protein into the cart. we can intelligently suggest logical add-ons based on what they've previously purchased, their dietary needs. So imagine like skipping around the store in an online experience, and you're able to do that whether the person's shopping from their laptop or on their mobile phone. So we've made it easier than ever for customer to fill their cart, and then also to get those items brought from the store to their door better than ever before.
Yeah. So there's the opportunity to make it easier for the shopper. Let's flip the conversation to grocers.
Totally.
So what's the most common mistake you see when grocers are trying to build their e-commerce business?
Look, I think a lot of it is about digital readiness and nailing the basics first. Like if a retailer came to us and said, we want to go online, we want to make sure that they can manage that transition safely and successfully. So things that we look are, does the retailer have a website? Do they have a mobile app? Do they have a rewards program? These are kind of the fundamental basics to e-commerce in 2025 going into 2026. And the evidence that if a grocer has implemented those, even social media, that they're ready to take the next leap and they can be successful. And so I think that, obviously, while we're eager to get every grocer online, we want to make sure that these multi-generational family-owned businesses succeed in their first steps in e-commerce. And of course, there's this other element here that we're going to talk about as well, Michael, around retail media, and how that's dramatically transforming the experience to grocers as well, because the cost equation is way different than it has been in the past.
Yeah, so let's talk about that in a second, but it sounds like, if I can paraphrase your answer, the most common mistake grocers make is perhaps focusing ahead of the game, or the foundation's not in place, and I got to get that right before jumping to the next step, or even taking 2 or 3 leaps forward. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that retailers see I need e-commerce, but I think e-commerce is really part of an overall digital strategy that's underpinned by website, underpinned by mobile app, also underpinned by digital weekly ad, and then e-commerce ultimately creates a transactable element for the shopper. I'd say the other misconception we see a lot, Michael, is that retailers feel like they need to have an entire dedicated digital team. I can't do e-commerce for my stores because I'm a single store operator. I can't do what Kroger, Costco, Meijer, Publix, the big guys do. And actually, the reality couldn't be farther from that. The tooling that's happened over the last decade has made it so that single store operators can compete and small chains in ways that they never have been before. And that's everything from the way search has improved to the way that we've been able to support retailers from a catalog perspective to actually helping them do pricing. We can support retailers in so many of these areas. And so when they launch online, they can actually deliver, we're putting them on a level playing field with some of the largest grocers in the land, so they can provide an absolutely awesome experience for their guests.
I think that's the benefit of where technology has gone versus it was more of a build mentality before. And I think if it's a build versus borrow or partner, especially independent grocers that are part of the IGA network, one store operators are going to get left behind. So the value of partnerships with folks like Instacart brings that support, brings that sort of incrementality, as opposed to I've got to do everything myself and I get so overwhelmed that I do nothing. And that's not what we want people to do.
That's right.
Yeah. So you highlighted a key trend, right? We would be remiss in this conversation if we didn't talk about retail media networks. And one of the things that we've talked about before, today, retail media isn't just for national chains anymore. So what are the actual opportunities you see for grocers when it comes to monetizing the digital shelf?
Yeah. So look, retail media is probably the most powerful force in the grocery universe right now. I mean, everybody is rewiring their business around retail media. I think of the impact on retail media and grocery similar to the way Moneyball and Sabermetrics got applied to baseball with Billy Beane and the Oakland A's. Like, this is just a total transformation. And I think the shift here is that what we've really seen in tech is that tech in grocery has traditionally been a cost center. And most grocers have resisted it because even if they know that it's like the right thing to do, trying to add more cost to the P&L, trying to shift customers from a more profitable to potentially less profitable channel has been difficult when margins have been compressed in grocery. And I think what the real unlock is that we're seeing for the very first time in independent grocery national brands committing dollars to monetize and get access to grocers' customers. Now, the two key things is that one, the grocers have to have enough scale to work with. No one single independent is going to be able to do it on their own. So any form of aggregation is really important. I think the second side of it is that you've got to be able to provide the ROI back to the brand. The brand is not just looking for impressions. They want to know that because a customer saw this ad or this promoted item at this point in time, they're trying to get to the moment of purchase. And then they want to know that advertising made a difference. So we're working really closely across the industry. I just came off this last week, a visit with Rafta, retailer-owned food distributors and associates that represents the top 8 co-op wholesalers in the United States. They represent $40 billion of retail volume, 6,500 stores, and we're powering their retail media network. And the results have just been amazing. Like Rose Hour Supermarkets in the Pacific Northwest, they doubled their monthly ad revenue, and they're now covering 66% of all of their e-commerce fees through our retail media network. Davis Food and Drug doubled or tripled their advertising revenue year over year. Brolam's Fresh Foods, they're like the Wegmans of Idaho. They're covering 70% of their e-com fees through retail media revenue that we're attracting through Carrot Ads. So I think this is going to be a very exciting flywheel, and it's fantastic to see these independents get their fair share of the retail media pie.
So you mentioned scale being critically important, which I wholeheartedly agree. And one of the benefits that IGA brings to our retailers is the scale, driving attention and investment from brands that they couldn't otherwise get. That's true on what we do on a day-to-day basis for marketing programs. That's definitely true on a retail media standpoint. But realistically, without the tech of some of the national players you said, it's hard to do. And you mentioned Carrot Ads, but if I'm just starting to dip my toe into it, what should a retailer focus on first?
Sure. So let's make it like super simple. Most of the retail media in e-commerce today comes from sponsored products or paid search promotion. An analog to this would be like when you do a search in Google, there are certain promoted posts that come to the top of the results. We have a very analogous system on Instacart. When you search cereal, you're going to see promoted items like General Mills or Post. When you search ketchup, you're going to see Kraft Heinz. And what's happening there is that those brands are paying to make sure that their category captains are showing up in the first in search and browse. And so effectively, retailers are getting their pro rata share of these national dollars. And so when a retailer joins Instacart, they're not just getting access to 60-minute delivery around their stores. They're not just getting access to the best of breed e-commerce platform used by tens of thousands of stores across North America. They're getting access to those national campaigns from key CPG brands, and they're getting their fair share of that. And so I think the easy way for grocers to get started is they sign up for a program like Storefront Pro, and they're able to take advantage of getting their Carrot Ads. Now, once you're on Storefront Pro and you're getting that Carrot Ads revenue, there's tons of best practices that we can do to help you grow your e-commerce business. But that's probably the baseline. And part of the reason why I think Instacart is being able to provide outsized value to our independents right now is there's certainly compression happening in the retail media space. I mean, you saw there was a bloom of all these different networks over the last 2 to 3 years. And now brands are saying, look, I can only focus on 3 to 5 of these retail media networks. I want to focus on the ones where I'm getting the most scale. And Instacart is right there. We make it easy because all of those brand pipelines are already built up. We work with over 6,500, 7,000 brands that are overdoing over $1 billion of advertising on the platform. So that really is a reason to be on Instacart because you're going to get access to those funds.
Yeah. So you touched on something I wanted to hit on as well in terms of just sort of the compression, right? As every retailer and their mom has created their own retail media network, or maybe dad too, just given what we've seen. These dollars aren't going to continue to go everywhere. One of the things that's unique about independent retail or difficult about independent retail has been kind of the unintended consequences of brands focusing on the big folks and dollars perhaps unintentional discrimination against some of the small players, which in the case of retail media has fueled money into the kitty to support additional competition against independents. How do you play around with that, given the fact that there are so many players on the Instacart platform, from big players who have not invested in their own platforms down to mom and pop one store operator?
Yeah, so you're getting me fired up, Michael. So I want to come off the top rope in defense of our independent grocery partners. Look, first off, if you're a major brand, you're being charged with growing sales. The independent channel is a fantastic place to do that because it has been underinvested relative to other large format retailers. Those dollars have largely gone into some of the larger chains, and so now you've got an opportunity to say, well, every dollar I put in independent, I'm actually getting more flex on that dollar than maybe in other areas where I could be overinvested. So I think that's one reason why independents, have an opportunity. I think there's also an optimization standpoint. Many grocers, these independents, are focused on the four walls of their store. These large brands have dedicated digital teams that know a lot about how to merchandise, how to market, how to do seasonal event content for their brands. And so they can bring that through Instacart, through digital display, and through other sponsored product listings, and they can line those up to the seasonal events that are happening in store. We see this a lot with the big game, with back to school, with other holiday fare, where you basically have national brands that are doing campaigns at the in-store level, and they can tie them to also campaigns they're supporting on Instacart. So you're getting a real interesting omni-channel flavor there. I'd say also that independents, at least my experience has been that they're willing to be more experimental. They're willing to kind of challenge and go outside of the box to do interesting things with brands. And so there's another opportunity here for brands to kind of get, I think, a little bit more exploratory in terms of and experimental in terms of what they're working on with retailers. We're seeing this where we've got brand partners that want to figure out ways to move more units. And they're engaging directly with the leaders of cooperative and privately owned wholesalers to figure out how they can do more with the independent space. And so I think there's like a natural, it's easy to say that because these brands are so big, they're going to put their dollars towards the big guys, but they're looking for ways to engage the independent. But here's the challenge. It's got to be easy. It's got to be easy. It's got to be as easy to send $1 to a national chain as it is to send to an independent. And we as an industry have a lot of work to do. And I think Instacart and our wholesaler partners have been teaming up in a big way. We work very closely with IGA as well, fighting every day out there for the independent grocer. And I think that one of the things we need to keep doing is thinking about how we not only make it easy and affordable to the retailer, but easy and affordable for the brand to engage with the retailers and the communities that they serve.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I echo all the things you said in terms of independence being an under-leveraged asset for brands coming from sort of big brand myself, DSD. We kind of went everywhere at Coca-Cola, but getting into this role at IGA, I've noticed that a lot of brands just focus on the big guys. And so the only way that is going to change is if independents make things easier, the results are there. And to your point, I'll just reiterate that first point, easy. And so if it becomes complicated, they're not going to do it. So it sounds like the solve to some of this, right, is, if retailers on the independent side are not getting the investment they want, if they don't show up, they're not going to get the investment, right? And so
That's right.
being a part of these scale platforms.
That's right. I mean, already we're getting retailers their pro rata share of those national campaigns. The big opportunity is when folks like IGA, Topco, wholesalers are able to say, look at how many of our retailers are on this platform, and we're giving you an easy way to get access to it. Now we're attracting incremental dollars from these brands to participate as well. So I think there's a lot of headroom for independents to grow in this space. I also think, Michael, if you start delivering dollars to retail on the e-commerce side, you're giving them reasons to believe that they should invest in other digital technologies like loyalty, like digital weekly ad, and you start to get a flywheel effect from all of this media where you're now creating more ways for grocers to engage with brands.
I think the thing that sometimes gets forgotten too is if you're getting retail media dollars, it means you're driving sales, and so
Yes.
you're getting the sale. You're getting, in many cases, you're getting sales at margin. And so it's not just about the dollars that come as a result of the retail media, but it's the business, it's the trips,
And
it's the
can we also say that
transactions,
like
it's
those,
the eyeballs.
yeah, and to your point, you're getting that dollar for increased sales. You shouldn't just take that dollar and put it in your pocket. You should reinvest a portion of that dollar into additional digital media that you can then monetize to drive more sales and more engagement with brands. So there is a virtuous cycle that can be unlocked by being thoughtful about attracting those dollars and reinvesting them into the ecosystem.
Absolutely. So let's talk about another trend that you've been talking about, the artificial intelligence, right? We couldn't have a conversation if we didn't talk retail media and AI. So you've said that AI is finally becoming practical. So what use cases are delivering actual value today versus just talk value?
Yeah. So I think there's probably, I appreciate the steer on the question because AI and RMN can be easily used as buzzwords as the way that omnichannel was used years ago. But I think that we've got some really practical use cases that we can talk to. Here are the ones that I think that we're creating the most value. The first is like agentic commerce, right? Through partnerships with leading generative AI companies, like as an example, our former CEO Fiji Simo moved over to OpenAI. We are on the front seat, on really the tip of the spear for helping shape how grocery shopping works across the next generation of digital agents. So in this
hold on,
example,
Nick, you said the front seat and the tip of the spear. That would be awfully painful.
Look, maybe here's a simple example. You go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I got to order dinner for 5. I want it to be like I want to pick it up at this time. I'm going to be landing at this time. Where's the closest retailer that I can do it?" So that's a great example of basically having the ability to order inside of ChatGPT, or even having like AI based search inside of Instacart. That's one example. Another great example would be, you've seen caper carts in the Geisler stores, which continue to just drive tremendous value to our customers. We've got these across all of North America right now. Basically, an AI-powered shopping assistant so that we can provide personalized conversational support, both when the retailer's online or when a customer's online in store, and it makes every interaction easier. So as an example, Sprouts Farmers Markets is going to be the first one to launch Cart Assistant on their website, apps, and in store via Caper Carts. So we're like bringing like an AI assistant into the shopping experience. Catalog. This is an area that has been traditionally super hard for grocers, right? You're an independent. You don't necessarily have all the images, the descriptions, the names. And then like when you come online, you've got to enrich your catalog file with all this information. AI it's a perfectly suited use case, basically helping them to build more accurate catalog. And the reason why this is important is because basically when you think of e-commerce, found rate is really important and fill rate is really important. If I'm a shopper and I'm looking for an item and I can't find it on the site, or I order an item and it doesn't get filled, I have a really negative experience. It doesn't make me want to come back. So that's another area where AI really helps. And then finally, like in-store intelligence. This is probably a huge unlock, right? You've got a disconnect between what's on the shelf and maybe what is available in the supply chain.
Yeah.
Right. Any of us has probably looked around. We've seen somebody walking around the store with a scan gun or a clipboard doing inventory. Can we get more intelligent in terms of providing real-time visibility to what's on the shelf? So things like AI, computer vision, ordering signals. You can basically take shelf images and video and turn them into insights that improve inventory accuracy. But I think at its best case, can actually automatically replenish the store and make sure that you're keeping those stores stocked. So that's a handful of different examples. Happy to double click into any of them, but those are real use cases where we're using AI today to empower our retailers of all sizes. This isn't just tools that are available for the big guys. Everything I've mentioned is getting deployed at local independent grocers as well.
It's interesting when you're talking about personalization, right? If you follow the personalization perhaps to a dangerous endpoint, it's only showing me things that I've bought before, or things that are, you can kind of go down that rabbit hole, but you add the agentic AI and the predictive intelligence on top of that, right? It then expands it to say, well, if you like this or you bought this before, how about this? And the findability that you talked about, I think is critically important. We've come a long way from putting in lamb in your search bar, and sort of dog food shows up when you're looking for lamb chops or stuff like that. So I think the smarter the AI gets, the more sales that will be generated, right? That's what we want at the end of the day. And so making sure that these tools are embedded across the board, not just, as you said, for the big guys, is, I think, critically important.
Absolutely.
So what data or behavioral signals then should grocers start with if they want to personalize that customer experience and, ultimately drive sales, but, increase lifetime value as well?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's a lot of signals. I would say, to keep it simple as an answer for independents, is you want to work with partners that are embedding AI into everything that they do. Whether you're working on e-commerce with Instacart or on the loyalty side or rewards and offers, you want to have companies that have an AI first strategy, so that effectively you're not having to build an AI roadmap. They're kind of infusing it into the systems and tools that you're already using. So as an example, if you're using rewards, you want to have a company that can basically look at the shopping behavior of your guests and be promoting offers and discounts and coupons that are relevant to them. Like, you use the example of dog food. Like, I don't want to be getting dog food offers if I don't have a dog, right? And a really strong rewards provider should be able to take a look at that and do that. On the Instacart side, we've instrumented every aspect of the e-commerce experience to be able to pick up these signals. So, we, as an example, we know that if somebody's adding taco shells to their cart, it's highly likely that they're going to want ground beef, they're going to want seasoning, they're going to want lettuce, they're going to want cheddar. And by anticipating those next few moves, we can make it easier for them to fill their basket. Because look, people are very busy. We're not going to get a lot of their time and energy every day. And whatever we can do to reduce friction is important. If you ask me to throw the deep ball and get a sense of kind of where everything's going next, I'd say look, all of us, when we're all the chief procurement officers of our families. We're trying to put food on the table, answer the questions for what's for dinner tomorrow, what's for dinner the day after. I think we're agentic commerce. What's that?
Or tonight, right? What's
or tonight?
I think the classic 5 p.m. conversation.
Totally. I think that's where AI has the most promise for grocery, is that basically getting an automatic quartermaster who is kind of ordering and doing some of that procurement on behalf of the household. It's not to say that we're not going to be making decisions, but how great would it be if you had an AI assistant that basically says, hey, here's what I think your grocery order is going to be for the next 5 days, because I've seen your purchasing patterns and behaviors over the last several weeks or months. And I know that the family likes pizza night on Fridays. And the last time we did that was a couple of weeks ago. So let's throw that in the mix.
Yeah, I don't know that I want full insight into what is in my pantry, but yes, I know what you're talking about. So let's talk about measurement, because, what gets measured is what matters. How should grocers think about the return on investment and measurement of their e-commerce investments today?
Sure. So I think one area that we've been able to work on and partner is provide a lot of benchmarking and best practices. I truly believe that retailers don't buy from vendors; they buy from other retailers. And the best in the best of cases, what you can do is provide case studies and guidance, so that retailers can basically choose to make the decisions on their own. And so we've been lucky to have a number of our retail partners that effectively have opened up their playbook and said, here's what we did to achieve these results. A lot of the measurements today are focused on things like basket size, year-over-year sales increases, percentage of fees that are being covered by RMN. I would say that those are some of the key areas that are currently being benchmarked. Part of the thing that we do is that we can anonymously provide retailers with kind of how they're rating relative to their peer groups. And we do the same thing with some of our wholesaler partners as well. So they can get a sense of here's where I am relative to the rest of the pack. We're not sharing any retailer specific information, but it helps retailers get a sense of maybe what the areas are for improvement. Other areas that we think about from an operational standpoint are image coverage in the catalog. That's a big one. 90% is the average on Instacart as a whole. A lot of independents typically trail behind that, and we do things to help them build up their catalog. But I think right now, we're really focused on top line growth from a sales standpoint, RMN growth from a bottom line profitability standpoint, sharing best practices within that community, and then also kind of reinforcing it with the rest of the case studies and other information we can provide to support the grocers.
That's
I think
awesome.
part of it
Yeah.
though is that like there's too much data out there, so you got to separate the signal from the noise and actually give people actionable insights as opposed to reports that they need to pour through.
So you touched on perhaps where I was going to go anyway, but you threw the word insight in there. So one of the questions I love asking on Shopper Matters, given that we're talking about shoppers and insights about shoppers, how do you define an insight?
Yeah. So I would say that for me, uh, when I think of an insight is I want to have an actionable piece of intelligence that I can take and move the business. The difference between a report where I'm seeing all the data and the insight is that the insight is whatever I've been able to glean from poring over those reports and dashboards. Now, where I think Instacart can provide extraordinary value to our retailers is to tie back to the AI conversation, agentic analytics. So basically, we've now added a layer on top of our existing dashboards and reporting that takes that existing retail data and then says, "Great, here's what you should do about it." It helps management teams ask the complex questions and get clear answers fast. So you can say, what were my sales over these stores over the last 3 weeks? What should I be doing as I approach the holiday season to boost sales in these stores? I want to run a promotion. What would be the best type of promotion to attract new customers to e-commerce? So those complex layered questions where we've got to chew through a lot of data to create a result is important. And I think, for a lot of retailers, questions are the new answers. They want to be able to kind of free form figure out ways to drive their business and not necessarily have to dig through all the data for them. So that's how I think of insights today.
Yeah. And then follow up to that, you said, hey, here's the recommendations, right? What items should I put on sale today? What items should I promote? What items should I advertise behind? Whatever those questions are, is there built-in feedback loop to that of the AI is telling me X, and then on the back end, here's how it actually performed?
That's right. It's basically AI is telling you X, take the action, and then be able to double check and see, well, did the intervention actually bend the curve upwards in the way that we wanted it to?
Yeah. So if I'm a grocer evaluating a new e-commerce platform or digital tool, even, what should I ask? Put yourself in their shoes based on what you know in your seat now with would you say with the tip of the spear on that seat?
Yeah.
What should I ask vendors to ensure that investment will pay off?
I mean, number one question, if I was an independent grocer running a single store or multiple locations, is I would say, tell me who else is using your product and the results that they're seeing. Right? That's a very basic question, and honestly sorts through a lot of the results. For an independent grocer to identify who they see as a peer or a competitor and see indicative results of what they're experiencing on the platform, that's probably question number one. Question number two, I would ask the vendor is, are you building and investing in tools specifically for independent grocers? There's a lot of technology providers out there that are taking a one size fits all, but I really do believe that this channel of trade requires a certain dedicated focus in terms of product development, account management, and retailer success. The third question I ask is like, how are you working with the industry groups that support my business? How are you working with IGA? How are you working with my wholesaler? Because I think, to be honest, I don't think independent grocers could be competitive and to be surviving and thriving without the support of IGA and wholesaler partners to vet vendors and provide additional levels of support. I'd also ask the vendor, like, what is my competition doing? It's a layered question because number one, you're getting a nuanced take in terms of how to think about the competitor and maybe ways that you haven't assessed. But I also think it's a little bit of a test on your potential vendor partners. How well do they understand the competition and how it's going to impact your business? Independents are vital in terms of serving their communities, but they serve markets that otherwise they serve markets, and they've been doing it for generations, that in many ways are not touched by some of the larger national chains. And so to really succeed, you need a vendor, particularly a technology vendor, that understands those dynamics and the economics to be a great leaned-in partner for the independent retailer.
Yeah, I think this might be a little sacrilege, given that I'm employed by the Independent Grocers Alliance. But I think that the name sometimes independent is a misnomer because no one can do it on their own. You need great partnerships to be successful, as you said. Even whether that's learning from peers or learning from competitors, no company is an island, I guess maybe is the way of saying it. And so making sure you're answering those, asking those questions in the right way, getting the right answers, and understanding the industry. 2.5 years in, I'm still learning and understanding how the whole independent space and wholesalers and everything works. And it is complicated. And to come in and say, hey, we've been in restaurants and we've done it for years, and here's why you should adapt our point of sale system or our e-commerce or whatever it is. Like, there's so many nuances that just won't work. So understanding the marketplace, right? It's marketing 101. Understanding the marketing place is critical to success.
Yeah, to your point, I'd say if I was going to add one more bonus question to the retailer, it would say, do you play nice in the sandbox with all my other vendors, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important one too, because you talked about the importance of retailers having support from those key groups, but you really need to make sure that your point of sale vendor, your rewards vendor, your digital ad, your e-commerce, all of these platforms work and play seamlessly, because an independent just can't afford to have situations where these partners can't integrate.
Yeah, I think that's critical. So partnerships and integration are super important. A little bit perhaps off topic, but one of the things we find or historically have found in e-commerce is that the fresh categories have perhaps underperformed. And if you look at e-com in general across categories, grocery is a category that doesn't have the same penetration. So you've got fresh, critically important to grocery in general, especially in store. What has happened over the past year, 6 months regarding fresh and shoppers' either reticence or shoppers' renewed acceptance of those fresh categories in e-com?
Yeah, so interesting. Like, having now worked in e-commerce and grocery for over 13 years, it's been interesting to see the trajectory of this segment. I can tell you, when we started out nearly 13 years ago, it was interesting to see categories like bakery and deli trend under what they would normally see in store. The bakery one was easy because bakery was very sensory. You'd go into many of these independent retailers, and I remember saying, "Oh, this is the reason why we're not selling more bakery online. You can't smell the donuts being freshly baked when you walk in the store when you're moving around and adding items to your cart." On the deli side, similarly, what we found is that customers, it's a very sensory experience. They want to be able to select and discuss and have that interaction at the deli counter. I think if you look at, if you flash forward a little bit, what ended up happening is that fresh overall started to increase, but that was mainly demographic driven. You had maybe a customer that was higher income, that was buying the perimeter of the store more often. I think what we're going to see, Michael, in terms of how we drive growth in the fresh categories around the store, is understanding that the customer who is ordering online today is more of an eating customer than a cooking customer. And that is to say that the types of offerings that need to be merchandised more heavily in the online experience are items that are ready to heat, ready to eat, that are meal solutions. And that's the customer that we're going to attract, because they're a convenience-oriented customer, they're time-starved. And by promoting those categories, we're going to probably have more uptake. So slightly different merchandising, I think, in terms of the way that we would approach that than a traditional retail format.
So, Nick, you've given us a strategic and a grounded view of where grocery e-commerce is and is heading. So, final question, especially as we move into 2026, if you had to pick one action grocers should take, what would that be?
If I had to give one action to a retailer to take,
you can cheat and do a couple, but
okay. If I was to give one action for a retailer to take, it would be that they need to be offering e-commerce for their stores. On a most basic level, you're getting 60-minute delivery time around your retail location. By leveraging Instacart's 600,000 plus shoppers, we're able to pick, pack, and deliver the order from your store to the customer's door. That's a huge convenience increase. We're able to do that at any time of the day to support those end customers. But more importantly, getting on Instacart for e-commerce is getting you into retail media. And that is, again, going to be so transformative. For really the first time in decades, independent grocers are able to attract national incremental dollars to drive bottom line profitability, but more importantly, to drive sales. And these brands have forgotten more than we'll ever learn about how to sell their products on the digital shelf. And so it's a very easy step. And by doing that, these grocers are going to be on a level playing field. Like many grocers we talk to say, we're in an unfair position in the industry. We don't have the same technology as the big guys. Well, with us, we're putting you in that same race car and helping you perform at the level of guest expectation that your shoppers have today. So that would be the one action I would take to help retailers be successful in 2026 and beyond.
Thanks again to Nickitas and the Instacart team for sharing practical and actionable insights with us. The three themes that we talked about today are things that they've been talking about and have been published in other places, and you can definitely do a deeper dive and read those insights and why they're important to grocery retailers today. Thank you for joining Shopper Matters, where retail intelligence meets real-world action. So subscribe today, share, stay tuned for our next episode, and thank you, Nick, for participating in our conversation today. It's been fun.
Michael, thanks so much. And thank you to the entire IGA team for everything you do to support independent retailers across the country and around the world. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining the Shopper Matters podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe so you'll automatically receive new episodes as they are released.